From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan, alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's going on today, Lou? What do we got on tap?
Matt, one of the subjects we often speak of is from Wall Street to Main Street. And who better today to encapsulate that mantra from the board of Google to Main Street USA? It's Chris Hood. Chris, welcome to the podcast. Chris, I have to tell you, every once in a while, I fall in love with a guest. I have a little bit of a bromance. We love your background. We love your profile. But I have to ask you one question. We're going to start out with that one question. What is customer empathy?
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to start. Well, thank you for having me, and great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation today. Customer empathy basically just boils down to walking in somebody else's shoes. So I'm sure we've all heard that phrase, like, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes so that you know who they are. Customer empathy is all about that. It's understanding who the customer is, what are their needs, what are their desires, expectations, feelings about your company, your products, and then be able to translate that into products and services that are going to meet those needs. But in theory, you can't do that without actually knowing who that customer is as a person, as an individual, what their emotions are, what their needs are. A lot of times as entrepreneurs, we'll simply say, hey, I know what you want, and I'm going to produce something and give it to you. Well, you can't do that, right? Because odds are you're not going to be able to sell this idea you have without actually understanding what their needs are first.
You have a lot of experience in this. You were at Google for 6 years, head of business innovation and strategy. Did you guys put this in place in Google? Is this where you learned this, or was this something that you learned out of school?
Yes. So the basic premise of customer empathy is rooted in a lot of different types of ideation and thought leadership practices. So there's a practice called design thinking. As an example, design thinking starts with customer empathy. There are any number of other types of processes or frameworks that are around customer first. Even if you're a developer, like software developer, the premise of agile development is rooted in getting customer feedback so that you can improve your software products. So I don't think that is really anything new. However, it is amazing how often people forget it. It becomes just something like, oh, yeah, we talk to our customers, but you can tell that everything that they are doing, and this is one of the things that I helped companies, our customers at Google, learn and understand better. You have Fortune 100 companies, major Wall Street organizations out there that say they are looking at their customers' needs, but really they have their own agenda, their own ideas, their own products and services that they're building with very little insight to what the customer is actually looking for. And so, yeah, I'm passionate about it because I think it is a valid way of looking at everything across business and technology. And it's something that, I spend a lot of time talking, like I said, with our customers about at Google.
Can you give the audience some tips, tactics, or strategies to, really uncover what the customer wants when they pick up the hood, right? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, ask.
Ask a silly question, get a silly answer.
Look, I'll give you an example. So I was helping a CEO of a online retailer at one point in time. And they noticed that they were getting a lot of abandoned carts. So people were coming to their store, putting stuff into the cart, but then leaving. And they wanted to understand why. And they had a theory. The CEO came and said, I know why people are abandoning the cart. They think that the checkout process is confusing. And because that checkout process is so confusing, they just leave the cart and they don't finish the purchase. And I asked the simple question. I said, how do you know that? And well, because it's confusing to me. So if it's confusing to me, then it must be confusing to our customers. So let's change the entire technology stack that's built around the checkout process, because that's going to solve it. And I made the simple suggestion, why don't we ask our customers? Like, let's put a survey out there. And this is a common practice now. You put something in your cart, you don't check out, you get an email like 5 minutes later that says, hey, we see that you didn't check out. And let's actually ask. So we had 5 options. 1 question, 5 options. And we attached a coupon to it. So, hey, 10% if you fill this out and you come back, right? And the question was, why did you not complete your purchase? Here are the options. Checkout process was too confusing, because that's what we believed it was, or the CEO believed it was. The information I was looking for was not there, or the size of the t-shirt, whatever, was wrong, or the cost of it was too expensive, a couple of things like that. We got about 1,000 responses back on this little survey, and like 70, 80%, I can't remember offhand how much, but like a substantial amount of people said the cost of the product was too expensive, and that's why they refused to complete the purchase. So I presented the information to the CEO, and the CEO said, I don't believe it. Let's change the checkout process. That business, unfortunately, went out of business about 6 months later. The CEO had the power to make the change, but refused to do it because they were not listening to the customer. And that really summarized exactly what we're talking about.
Chris, it's funny because for context, a couple of weeks ago, we had a guest on the podcast, and he used the example of Ryanair's success because of their antipathy towards their customers. Because their customer base is so focused on price, they get away with being a little rude, a little crass, a little tight, a little cheap. But because their client base is that focused, they can get away with antipathy. Now,
by the way, if anybody knows what antipathy means, please send me an email. Thanks, Lou.
But here we're focused on the empathy towards a client. I mean, this is enough to drive the average small business owner crazy. I mean, do we cater to the small business owner? Do we do the angry soup kitchen guy? It's at a certain point, Matt and I love to say, just do it, launch it, and then figure it out as you go. Is there any merit to that?
So there's a couple of things in here, but if we actually dissected it and you go back to the antipathy of, they like, what does the customer want? They know who their demographic is. The customer is, they want cheap prices. That's it. That's what they're providing. So they're meeting the needs of their customers. It's still customer focused. It's just a different approach to what they're focused on. And Soup Nazi, as we want to say, great Seinfeld episodes, angry soup guy, what are they serving? Ultimately, it's the best soup in town, so it doesn't matter. You want to go have the soup. They're meeting the customer needs. You can break all of that down. But to your question, just launch something? Absolutely. The whole point of launching a business is just get it out there and then adapt and change based on what you learn from your customers as you progress. You can't predict everything. You've got to have some sort of hypothesis or some sort of a theory of what you want to build. And we know that there's probably hundreds of people who are listening who are entrepreneurs who are starting up businesses. I'm sorry, you're probably going to fail. That's okay. We can talk about that later. That's okay. You still have to just do it. And it could be any number of reasons. It could be, it says, hey, I want to launch an AI business in the AI space right now. Well, you might be ridiculous to try to do that, or you might think like you've got a unique idea, but everybody's doing that. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? What are your customers actually asking for? You've got to be able to ask those questions. Not all ideas are going to be successful. It's the process of just get it out there and launch it. Then start to analyze what your customers want, make the rapid adjustments and cater to what their needs are, and then grow your business from there.
Chris, Matt and I love what you represent. You left big corporate job and now you're hung your shingle and you're doing it on your own. I don't want to undervalue the step that you've made, right? When you're at Google, that pantry is full and that water cooler is chilled, and I'm sure there's lots of goodies in the reception area. Explain to the everyday folks like us that, run their own business and we're small business owners, how difficult is that transition? Or for you, was it such a relief because you wanted more independence?
Yeah, I think we're all individual people with individual ideas and, needs and feelings like we're talking about with our customers. I think there's a lot of people who enjoy the routine and the satisfaction and we'll put this in major quotes, the security of working with a large business. And then there's people who are driven by the desire of building something and they're passionate about just waking up and holding their own destiny. There's no right or wrong. It's each individual. But I do believe that there's a safety net that I think we all have to think about. And that safety net will allow us to have the flexibility to do the things we are passionate about while still having the security that we may find in a corporate job. And it's just, again, how you balance all of that.
That's the basic premise of the book that we wrote, Buying the American Dream. If you guys go get it, go out. April 7th, it's launching, go buy it. But we definitely think the new American dream is some type of entrepreneurship, right? The old American dream was, let's buy a house, get 2.5 kids, a yellow lab, right? And go work for 40 years. I don't think that's the case anymore, especially with Gen Z and the younger generations out there, right? I don't think anybody wants to go and work at, Google, prestigious name. Who wouldn't want to work at Google, right? But if you look at and say, I want to go work at, Procter and Gamble and be middle management, I just don't think it's as attractive anymore, especially with the layoffs and everything that's been going on over the last 3 economic crises and the pandemic.
Yeah and no. Yeah and no. I believe that there are still a good chunk of individuals, definitely Gen Z individuals who are graduating from college right now who have a goal, and it's not entrepreneurship. For example, even if we get into politics, there's a whole bunch of people who are in the traditional kind of poli-sci government, and they've got their, I'm going to be president in, 20 years. And they're going to go through that process. I do think that there are people in like the financial sector. Now, financial sector is obviously adjusting instead of traditional banking. There's definitely fintech, and there's some really exciting things that are happening in that area, and we can call that startups, but it's still mostly financial, and there's a routine that goes with that. Doctors, healthcare, all of those types of degrees, you've got individuals who are going to pursue those, and they're going to continue to do that and get into those systems, whatever they may be. And yes, there are a group of people who love the idea of, I'm going to go work for Google, or I'm going to work for Facebook or Twitter, or, Tesla, or fill in the blank, because there's that prestige and they hear all these great things of, fresh baked hot, chocolate chip cookies and, and snacks everywhere.
Foosball table, foosball table.
Foosball and Xbox and but then you have to ask yourself, and we've seen this recently, is what are you actually doing then? You're going to work and you're not actually working, So I do think that that's still there. I also still think that there are going to be people who are driven by the entrepreneurial spirit, and they're going to want to go and create something. And there's a lot of things to create. I was talking with somebody yesterday in the video game space. I mean, the video game space is continuing to grow exponentially, but at the root of that are just people who want to create something. Create new worlds, create characters, and create ideas. And there's money there, right? But I think one of the key elements that everyone should be considering is, what is your fallback? And that's what's often forgotten about, because you could go work at Google, you could go work in healthcare, be a doctor, but at some point in time, AI is pretty relevant. If AI replaces your job, then what are you going to do? What's that fallback? And I don't think it's always necessarily, I'm going to go be an entrepreneur and create a new business. That's a lot of work. Let's be honest, it's a lot of work. But I think you could still have a fallback plan, such as, hey, write a book. Just write a book. Have something that's going to occupy your time, so that if your first pursuit fails, for whatever the reason is, you still have something that you can fall back on. And now you've got this book that you've written that you can go out and market or talk about and come on podcast. Have something. It doesn't always have to be a startup or a small business. Have something, though. And that, I think, a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to go work 9 to 5, and then I'm going to come home and play with my dog, or, and grow my family and sit around and watch TV and make dinner together. That's not a fallback. And so I think, to your point, the fallback has to be almost like some hobby, some sort of commitment that you are making that is going to enable you to leverage that if the time comes.
Now, Chris, on that note, rumor has it you've got a book in the works that's upcoming very soon. Tell us a little, can you share a couple of insights as to your book, please?
Crazy enough, I have 2 books. One is a fiction book that I wrote a couple of years ago that I'm, kind of dusting off now. And it's a fantasy science fiction book. And then I have a business book that I am writing that is due to come out in May. And the business book is all about the stuff we've been talking about, the customer empathy and understanding customer perspectives and how customers are driving business more today than ever before.
Did you have more fun writing the fiction or the business book?
Oh, definitely the fiction. Again, creating worlds and coming up with some really exciting stuff. What's interesting about the business book?
What was the difference in the process of writing each one? That's what I'm really interested in.
The difference in the business book is that it's all coming from reflections of things that I already know and that I've been working on for 15 plus years. And then reflecting on stories within those. Like, as an example, the story I just shared about the CEO and the retail and the checkout, I included that in the book with more details and more specifics. I've had some fascinating conversations with executives around the world, and I include those stories as references and case studies in the book. And so that was very easy for me, right? Because I can sit down and I can say, oh yeah, I remember the story, and then I'm going to write a chapter around it. And the framework that I've built inside of this book to help everybody, all small businesses and medium-sized businesses and enterprise businesses, better connect with their customers, that entire framework is something that I've been working on also for 10 years. So finally being able to get it into a written form, and also, by the way, after I left Google so that Google wouldn't take ownership of it, I think that has been much easier in terms of process because I can write from what I know. The fiction, you're making it all up. And yeah, I can say, hey, I've got some fumblebum that I'm going to, what's a fumblebum?
Whatever I want it to be.
It's like widgets, right? We all talk about, hey, we want to sell a widget. Well, what's the widget? Well, in this, I can call it a widget, but you still have to define it. You have to build the world. You have to build characters and classes and create, and magic and all this kind of stuff. And
do you start with an ending and then reverse engineer it? Or did you just start, say, I want to write a story about a different world, and just start there?
In the fiction world, yeah, I started with a concept. And the book is about a 13-year-old girl who goes to a paranormal world of monsters. The entire society is monsters. And what I wanted to do was write a reverse perspective. if the monsters were seeking humanity, what would that look like? And so you've got all these classes and clans and factions, and really own their own cultures of monsters. Most monster stories today are focused on like a singular type of character. Dracula, he's a vampire. And yeah, there are other vampire types of movies, and you've got these societies of vampires. But if we were to expand that out and say, hey, let's take something like a scarecrow. Well, often you think of a scarecrow as a singular entity that's standing in the middle of a field. But what if that scarecrow was a society of scarecrows, and there was dad scarecrows and mother scarecrows and baby scarecrows, and they were working on the farms and having their life, and yet they don't understand what humanity is. And how would a 13-year-old girl teach them about that and interact with these scarecrows in that type of setting?
Yeah, Matt, there's no doubt he had more fun doing the fiction.
So, you did a lot of work with teams and people with technology and bridging the gap between technology and business teams. What are some tips that you have for the audience there?
Ask. It's amazing how
Is that the title of the book? Is the title of the book you asked?
Should be.
That would be great.
It's amazing how simple some of this is. So another quick story for you. I actually went to a large organization, international organization, and I sat down with the business team and I said, tell me a little bit about what you're building. Like, what are you trying to produce? And they said, well, we've got all these ideas. The problem is we send off our requests to the technology team to build them. We just throw them over the wall and we wait for them to get done, and then they come back. And we don't know when they're going to come or how they're going to come or if they're even what we've asked for, but that's the process. It's like, well, that's interesting. So I went over to the technology team and I asked them the same question. I said, tell me a little bit about what you're working on. What are you building? They said, well, we just build whatever gets tossed over the wall. Something gets tossed over the wall, we build it and we toss it back. I said, do you ever actually talk with each other? No, they didn't. I said, okay, well, here's the first thing we're going to do. We're actually going to get you into the same room in a completely different story, a completely different company. I had a workshop and I went into this workshop and there was about 30 people around the room. I had been talking with this team up until the workshop, trying to figure out, what do you want to talk about? What are we going to discuss? So I sat down and I said, welcome everybody. Glad that you're here. Let's get into the first topic. Somebody raises their hand and I said, yeah, you have a question. They're like, could we do introductions around the room? I go, sure. They're like, there are people around this room that we've never met. They're all in the same company and they've never met with each other for the thing that we're there to talk about. And that just goes to the whole premise of this is, like, you have to just talk. Like, get in the same room, ask the questions.
The reason I was laughing so much is because we were dealing with this, me and Luigi. We're building a fintech software right now. And we let the developers do their thing, and then they come back to us. I'm like, why does this look like this? You never told me to do this. So we did exactly what you just said. We had a meeting with everybody together, right? And they got to know each other, and now everybody's just conversing back and forth a little bit more rather than just going into their own little world and doing their thing and hoping for the end product to be right. But
yeah, the number of times I've gone into a meeting and they've said, like, who should be in the meeting? I said, everyone. Like, no, we need to have, a list of people who should be in. And so I put a list like, these are the roles, these are the teams that should be in the meeting, and never fails. The number one response is, oh, well, we don't really have meetings together like that. We can't get all those people into the same room. That's on you. No wonder you're failing.
how large are these companies though that are doing that? Because we have our team's tiny, right? Puny compared to some of these larger companies out there. And it's going to be difficult for larger companies to do it. I think that's I think that's why smaller businesses could actually react faster, and it's part of their competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think the problem with smaller businesses, and you're absolutely right, that some of these companies, tens of thousands of people, so it's obviously much harder to get everybody into the room, meeting schedules and stuff. But look, if it's critical and important to your business and success, you figure it out, or you don't. Like, I don't care. As you get into medium-sized businesses, even if you've got teams of 100 people, you'll find that it's still challenging. Yes, when you get a team of, say, 5 people, it's a lot easier to get them all into the same room. But what you have alternatively is you have all these individuals who are trying to just do the day-to-day operations and get the work done, right? And so the theory of, well, I don't have time to talk with the developers or the technology teams or whatever, that becomes more apparent because I'm sitting here trying to close a deal. I'm sitting here trying to build the business. I've got to do all of these things. I got to do all those things, whatever. Excuse after excuse after excuse, quite honestly, because again, if you care about your business, ultimately, you're going to get everybody into the same room to have the conversation, to make sure they're all hearing the exact same thing so that everybody's on the same page so that you can be successful. And if you aren't willing to do that, then why are you in business?
Chris, thank you so much for being here. We want to be respectful of your time. We definitely want to have you back on when the business book comes out, which is May, but we're definitely getting you back on when the fantasy book comes out.
Matt, just ask.
Yeah, just ask.
Hell,
Whatever you're ready.
I don't know. Yes, please, Chris, can we have you back? We would love it. Can you tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you on the socials? I'm sure some people are going to have some questions for you. And
yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is my website, chrishood.com. You'll find me, all my socials. You'll get insights to my podcast, The Chris Hood Digital Show. You'll find my social, really everything is there. So chrishood.com, and looking forward to chatting with other people.
so, Chris, last question before I let you run. What was your favorite project you worked on at Google?
Yeah, there's 2 that quickly came to mind. One, I was working with Princess Cruise Lines.
Okay.
So we had this really fascinating, obviously, cruise and experience. I'm putting aside all of the ones that I traveled internationally for. Obviously, those are always fun. But I would say that the best one was Domino's Pizza. And
Okay.
so if you're familiar today with the pizza tracker on Domino's Pizza, I spent a good 3-4 weeks with them kind of deciphering what that was going to look like.
I guess I have another question. I kind of lied, but I'm going to ask. So what does that look like? How did Domino's and Google decide to do some type of joint venture, or did Domino's come and hire Google to license the technology from them?
Yeah, so most of Google's customers are just that. They're customers. They have their own needs, their whatever the case might be. So we break down Google into different components. You've got the advertising arm, you got YouTube, you've got Google Cloud, you've got AI, right? So there's all these different services that Google offers, and all of the customers are leveraging those services within their, products. So Domino's is a great example. For the pizza delivery or for locations, there's a map. And where's that map data coming from? Google Maps, right? But if I build something and it's in the cloud, let's say I build an application, I need storage space, I need data processing space, I need big data to analyze my customer needs, I've got marketing trends, whatever those might be, that's all services that Google Cloud is providing. And then the company is asking like, hey, we want to build something. We want to build something new, like a pizza tracker, or hey, we want to connect our ships across the Atlantic to technical ports. We want to digitize the entire cruise experience so that people can use their phone to open up their door for their cabin, right? All of those different types of things that you are experiencing in today, somebody came up with the idea and then they leveraged a technology to be able to help produce that. And that's where I come in, is to go and sit down with those customers. What's your idea? What are you trying to build? And what are the technologies, tools, services that you'll need to be able to do it?
I love that, Chris. Again, thank you so much for being here. Guys, that's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.